You are listening to the Bell Ringers podcast on Philly Sports Reports, brought to you by SeatGeek. Here are your hosts, Colin Daly and Benjamin Goldstein.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bell Ringers podcast. Colin Daly, Benjamin Goldstein, and we are here on game day coming out with another edition of the Bell Ringers podcast, and we could not be more excited for the debut of postseason baseball for the Phillies in 2024. It is game day of Zach Wheeler versus Cody Senga, who is coming off the injured list, but Zach Wheeler is as healthy and as routined as ever. It's going to be an interesting game. We have the Mets, who are riding a hot streak, the Phillies, who were one of baseball's best teams for the entirety of the 2024 season. We have a lot to discuss today, Ben. Should we get right into it?
Yeah, first of all, it's Cody Senga, not Cody.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's news to me.
Cody Senga. Anyway, it's game day, game one, first Phillies and Mets playoff game ever. I'll be in the building, so I'm very excited about that. Rosters just came out for both teams. Let's talk about the Phillies roster, then we'll go into the Mets roster. For the Phillies, they're going with 12 pitchers. The left-handers are Colby Allard, Jose Alvarado, Tanner Banks, Christopher Sanchez, Matt Strom, and Ranger Suarez. The right-handers are Carlos Estevez, Jeff Hoffman, Orion Kirkering, Aaron Nola, Jose Ruiz, and Zach Wheeler. The catchers, there's two of them. It's JT Muto and Garrett Stubbs. They're carrying 7 infielders: Alec Boehm, Cody Clemens, Bryce Harper, Edmundo Sosa, Bryson Stott, Trey Turner, and Weston Wilson. 4 outfielders in Nick Castellanos, Austin Hayes, Brandon Marsh, and Johan Rojas. And 1 designated hitter, Kyle Schwarber. That's 12 pitchers, 14 position players, as we expected. And I have no real big surprises here, Colin.
No, I don't either. I think it's a shame that we don't see Spencer Turnbull on the NLDS roster, but hopefully he still gets some work in, obviously, outside of the game. And maybe if the Phillies do advance to the championship series, we could see him on that roster. I was interested to see Allard on there because I was reading something that Matt Gelb mentioned yesterday about Max Lazar potentially making the roster just due to his right-handedness and there being a lot of strong righties in the Mets lineup, that it might be nice to have a guy who's effective against right-handers in the bullpen. But they decided to go with Allard, who has kind of struggled of late. So I guess he is technically the 5th starter that will really just be the guy in the back end of the bullpen.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, Allard is the mop-up guy. I was thinking to see if we were going to see Lazar just because of the righty-heavy lineup the Mets have. But I don't think anyone's losing sleep over it, Colin.
No, I don't think so either. Hopefully we don't get to a point where we need to use a guy like that. And I know I mentioned in our last episode that Turnbull could really be an instrumental piece in the bullpen. But at the end of the day, the Phillies have a lot of capable guys back there. I mean, we know we're going to see Estevez in the 9th. And then there's Hoffman, Kirkering, Alvarado. These are guys who can take pretty high leverage situations. So I don't think it's something to be worried about. Jose Ruiz has stepped up and been big of late. And I totally forgot about Matt Strom too, who we know has had by far the best year of his career here in 2024. So they definitely have the people back there. Now it's really just about strengthening the troops and, getting our 8 best in the bullpen, which at the end of the day is not always possible due to, injuries and other things we can't always foresee. But I'm confident that even without Turnbull, this is still one of the best bullpens in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, they have their end of the line guys that they'll pitch when needed, and hopefully those mop-up guys won't be needed at all, especially in this series. We'll talk about the starters for games 1 and 2 a little later. Let's shift over to the Mets roster, which came out just around the same time as the Phillies. Their pitchers, they got Sean Manaea, Tyler McGill, David Peterson, Jose Quintana, Cody Senga, Luis Severino, Jose Butto, Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Phil Maton, Adam Ottavino, Ryan Stanek, and Danny Young. Their catchers, Francisco Alvarez and Luis Torrens. Torrens. Infielders, Luis Angel Acuna, Pete Alonso, Jose Iglesias, Francisco Lindor, and Mark Vientos. And their outfielders, Harrison Bader, Sterling Marte, Brandon Nimmo, Tyrone Taylor, and Jesse Winker. And designated hitter, JD Martinez. I mean, the only real thing that shows out to me is Kodai Senga, who's going to start game 1 for the Mets, which was announced yesterday. He's pitched 1 game this season. It came in July, and he's being thrown into game 1 at Citizens Bank Park. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, well, we know that Senga's a very, very good pitcher. He's got that lethal fastball that he is super effective when it's up in the zone, and now the ghost ball, as we like to call it. His just absolutely fatal off speed pitch that he has. So it'll be interesting to see how he returns to the mound. Obviously, like you said, it's his huge stakes, right? It's game 1. It's a game 1. It's away in the ballpark of one of the Mets' biggest rivals. And we see that in a lot of these 5-game series, the winner of game 1 fares much better than the loser in almost every situation. I mean, if you look back at the Phillies' last 2 postseasons, winning that first game in the series has been crucial in every single series that they have played, with the one exception really being the 2022 World Series. Obviously, that was the JT Realmuto game of heroics. Series did not go in the Phillies' favor. But yeah, I'm really curious to see.
Along with the 2023 NLCS, the Phillies won games 1 and 2.
Well, I thought we still weren't talking about that. I wasn't sure.
All right, well,
but no, you're right. You're totally right. Yeah, I've got to be objective here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of pressure for Senga today. So I'm curious to see how much he's going to be stretched out. I'm not totally sure what his rehab status was and how much he pitched prior to coming off the injured list, but it'll definitely be an interesting one today with him on the bump.
Yeah, he's been revving up in the Mets spring training facility since he went back on the IL in July. Came to the Mets and said he's ready to go. So, you throw him out there. It'll be Tyler McGill after Senga. So, depending on how long Kodai goes, you'll see Tyler McGill. He's coming off a left calf strain. Started the year on the IL with a right shoulder capsule strain. He was the ace coming into the season for the Mets. Didn't pitch 1 game, and now is stepping into the postseason against the Phillies, who he's dominated in his career. That's in 2 starts. He has a 1.46 ERA in 12 1/3 innings. And you go back to when the Mets signed Senga in 22. When he was asked if there was anyone he was especially looking forward to facing, Senga said in English, Phillies lineup. He's killed him so far. We'll see if he can do it today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm having trouble putting sentences together because of how excited I am about this game. So,
yep. And then for the Phillies, it's, of course, Zach Wheeler going out.
Yeah.
I mean, Cy Young candidate. You know what you're going to get from Wheeler in the postseason? You know what you're going to get from Wheeler every night. How big is it for the offense to get Wheeler run support today?
It's probably the one thing that's going to dictate this game, right? We know what we're getting from the Mets. They have they have 2 decent starters that are going to be lined up for today. Zach Wheeler is going to give you hopefully 6 very, very solid innings or more. I would expect nothing less from him. And we know that the offense with this team has kind of been the wild card throughout the season. So if they're on, the Phillies have a win. If they aren't on, then it's more of a question mark, I would say. There's definitely a potency to this lineup that allows them to have a few guys that maybe aren't hot at the given time, and they can still sneak away a few wins because they have that strong rotation, that strong bullpen, and just a star-studded lineup. But if they don't have a majority of their guys coming together, knocking in guys when there's runners in scoring position, getting the big hits, hitting for a little bit of power, but also hitting smart, right? Understanding that with a runner on second base, you don't need to hit it out of the ballpark. You need a ground ball to the right side. It's kind of the mentality of passing the baton. So I think it's going to be the small things today that dictate how the Phillies play. And I think if they can just keep everything in perspective and realize that, they don't need a hero in game 1. They need a scrappy win. We saw them get 95 scrappy wins this year. So I think they have room in them for 3 more.
Wheeler has allowed 2 or fewer earned runs in 16 of his last 17 starts. So
That's ridiculous.
yeah, that is pretty ridiculous.
Yes.
Last episode we talked about if he should be or 2 episodes ago we're kind of wondering if he should be signing or not. Obviously, it's a regular season award, not a postseason award, but Wheeler has deserved the Cy Young of the postseason. The last 2 seasons, he's been excellent.
Absolutely.
Let's shift to game 2, where
Okay.
it was a little bit of a debate for the Phillies: Aaron Nola or Christopher Sanchez. Game 2, they end up going with the right decision, Christopher Sanchez. At home, in 17 starts, he has a 2.21 ERA. On the road, 5.02 in 14 starts. You don't want him to send him out there with those numbers at a raucous crowd in Queens. They're going to pitch him at Citizens Bank Park, which is the right choice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very, very glad the front office made the right choice here. And Rob Thompson, I'm sure, had a pretty big say in it. The numbers are clear, right? Sanchez pitches much better at home, and I think that getting that extra rest for Nola, maybe pitching a little bit less frequently, could kind of negate the fatigue that he's experienced down the stretch the last 2 postseasons. We saw in 2022, he really struggled in that Padres series. He had the one start where I believe he allowed 5 runs. He struggled in the World Series. And then even last year, we saw in that Diamondback series, there were some ups and downs. I'm really hoping that the Phillies can kind of get in, get out with this series, and he only has to pitch once. Hopefully, we see a much healthier Aaron Nola, um, a much more prepared Aaron Nola in the NLCS and potentially the World Series. I also think that not having to play in the wild card series will be absolutely huge for Nola. Because I mean, I hate to say this, but last year the Phillies had the Marlins in the wild card series. It was arguably a waste of an Aaron Nola start, pitching when they were up by a game against a team that didn't really have much going for them offensively. Really just snuck into the postseason there, and the Phillies got stuck playing them. So I know that you can't make that decision to not pitch Nola in a winner like for game 2 in a 3-game series. That's like completely unrealistic. But I'm saying in hindsight, that's a game where they probably could have gotten away with not pitching him. But obviously, there's way too much that goes into that to make a last minute change of that scale. So I think that it's not going to only help Sanchez, but it'll help the rest of the rotation too, and that's huge.
Yeah, and then Ranger will be the game 4 starter if
Yep.
necessary. Topper said he likes Nola's experience in game 3 as the Phillies head to Citi Field. So makes sense. Right decision. For the Mets in game 2, it'll be Luis Severino, who has become their ace at this point. Now, before Kodai Senga came back, he was their guy at the top of the rotation, got a bunch of innings late down the stretch against the Brewers. He's going to go in game 2 against Sanchez. He pitched well. He pitched well against the Phillies. I don't have his numbers up against the Phillies right now, but pitched well against the Phillies earlier this season. But all focused on game 1 and Wheeler versus Senga, which the Phillies have lost only one game 1 since 2008.
Wow.
I believe it was the 2010 NLCS. They lost that series. They've lost 2. They've only lost 2 game 1s since the turn of the century. Considering their first postseason was in 2007.
Yeah.
In the 2000s. Wow. They got swept in 07, but yeah, only 2 game 1. It shows you how good these teams are.
No, yeah, and they come out firing. And like I said, in a 5-game series, that first game is huge. And I think that's part of the reason why they've had so much success in the NLDS the last 2 years. I think the only difference this year is they're facing a team that is very similar to themselves. All right. We faced the Braves the last 2 years, and the Braves and the Mets are 2 very, very different teams. The Braves have an expectation; they're more of an easygoing club. The Mets have seen that, yeah, they've already exceeded the bar. All they can do this season is further prove themselves. They have nothing to lose. So
Phillies were the hunters and are now the hunted.
Hunted, yeah.
So, what do you think's going to happen these first 2 games?
I think they'll split. I think the series is going to 5. So they're splitting the first 2 games here. They'll win with Wheeler on the mound.
The Phils are not
their streak.
The Phils are not losing at Citizens Bank Park to the New York Mets.
Luck doesn't go on forever, Ben.
Phillies in 3.
Not even 4.
Sweeping the New York Mets. Get Grimace out of here, man. No, OMG, the Mets season is over. All right. We'll talk to you guys after game 2. Make sure to tune in on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook before every game. The pregame shows. Colin's on today. I'll be on tomorrow. We'll see you guys later this week. Go Phils, man.
Go Phillies.
Go Phils. This has been the Bell Ringers podcast on Philly Sports Reports, brought to you by SeatGeek. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Philly Sports Reports wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Follow the podcast on X and PSR on all social media. Also, consider leaving a review. Catch Colin and Benjamin's writing on phillysportsreports.com, along with following both on X. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring the show.